Today's political figure episode, we've got a senator whose house I've never seen, but I've got to imagine it's a log cabin with a really big closet. The Southern Belle from South Carolina, Miss Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Olin Graham was born July 9th, 1955 in Central South Carolina. Central is a town, not a geographic descriptor. After graduating from D.W. Daniel High School, he went to the University of South Carolina to get a bachelor's in psychology, and then the University of South Carolina School of Law to get his Juris Doctor. After graduating with his law degree in 1981, he joined the Air Force Reserves and became a JAG officer. For those of you who don't own a television, JAG officers are military lawyers who ask Jack Nicholson for the truth that they are unable to handle. During this time, he actually did some good stuff, like exposing defective drug testing methods within the Air Force. And during the Gulf War, he'd go on to brief pilots before they left South Carolina on the laws of war, a job he would later use to describe himself as a Gulf War veteran on his website when he ran for public office. He would go on to serve 33 years in total with the Air Force, retiring with the rank of colonel in 2015. In 92, he was elected as a South Carolina House Representative, and in 94, with the help of Strom Thurmond. Why shouldn't the ghost of Strom still be haunting us? Lindsey was elected to South Carolina's 3rd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, in the House of Representatives, he was one congressman who tried getting a bunch of people on board to impeach Bill Clinton, for no particular reason at that point, other than it seemed like fun. And then after the Monica Lewinsky thing, he voted on 3 of the 4 counts to impeach Bill Clinton. The count he voted against was perjury in the case of Paula Jones, making the assertion that that count was more treating this impeachment like a soap opera rather than Watergate. Not only was this ironic at the time, it would become much more ironic in the future, but he apparently does have some conscience in there that he's trying really desperately to drown out. He would, however, go on to serve as the House impeachment manager during the Clinton impeachment because, you know, worrying about who's blowing the president definitely isn't soap opera drama. In 2002, Strom Thurmond decided to retire from the U.S. Senate. Side note, can you believe that Strom Thurmond was still alive and ruining the country in 2002? Fucking depressing. Anyway, while Strom was crawling off to find his hole to die in, Lindsey was a natural shoo-in to replace him. Now, remember that conscience I was telling you about that he's always trying to muffle like a sub with a suffocation kink? That came out to play a lot more during the first decade of his career. Miss Lindsey would use his position often to work on bipartisan policy solutions. In 2006, he and his very close and personal friend John McCain would go work with Ted Kennedy and Chuck Schumer to form some bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform policy, something he'd continue to hold bipartisan stances on until he went a little too far holding the pillow over his conscience's face in the 20-teens. Despite pretty much exclusively voting with Republicans on their disastrous tax policy 100% of the time, he did go on record saying that tax cuts without increasing revenue in other places was a serious problem, that if Republicans don't give up some ideological ground, the country's going to sink. Too bad he never voted that way, but you know, it's nice to hear it, I guess. In 2009, he helped draft bipartisan legislation for climate change, something else that would change again when his subconscious autoerotic asphyxiation went too far. By and large, early in his career, he had a reputation for being somebody who was willing to compromise and reach across the aisle to get things done. Unfortunately, this got him in some awkward situations with the Teabag Party, who didn't appreciate that he wasn't being as obstructionist as they would like. Don't worry though, that early bipartisanism did not mean he wasn't a piece of shit in most of his ideology. A staunch interventionalist, he has proposed that we go to war with basically everyone. He was obviously a big supporter of the greatest hits with Iraq and Afghanistan, but he's also suggested that we carry out a preemptive strike with Iran, voted against the Nuclear Arms Reduction Act with Russia, suggested we invade Libya, has vocally supported Israeli settlement building in Palestine. When he found out we had troops in Africa doing military stuff that he had no idea about, he was super excited and said we should do more of that. He helped organize military action in Syria. He supported Saudi Arabian intervention in Yemen. You get the point. Also, obviously, being a member of the party of small government and the Constitution and freedom, he obviously hates all of those things. In 2013, when the scandal came out that the NSA was unconstitutionally spying on U.S. citizens' phone conversations, he said he was glad that the NSA was collecting phone records of U.S. citizens and didn't mind if Verizon were even to turn over his phone records if they were going to be used to help catch terrorists. Then he authored a bill that would force the U.S. to sanction any country that offered asylum to Edward Snowden. He's also always been anti-abortion. In 2015, supporting legislation that would have a 20-week ban on abortions nationwide, only then to hypocritically turn around and say he supported the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade so the states could decide their abortion laws. The states should, be allowed to decide their abortion laws as long as it's the abortion laws that he supports, like 20-week bans. He's also been very anti-LGBTQ from the start, voting for the Defense of Marriage Act and saying that marriage is an institution between a man and a woman. Ironic, because apparently he has a history of hiring male escorts, and he's not the top. One such male escort actually shared with the public intimate details about Lindsey Graham's anatomy that none of us needed to know. About his butt moles. Apparently he nicknamed his ladybugs. God, I didn't think I was gonna make it through that. Whew. Anyway, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anybody that Lindsey Graham's anti-LGBTQ plus stances come from a strong self-loathing of his own sexual identity. Don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Miss Lindsey being gayer than the entire cast of Queer Eye, so that he condemns and oppresses other members of the LGBTQ community because he can't come to terms with his own identity. Despite Lindsey's conscience turning blue for years before that final death rattle, it did finally stop twitching in 2017. 2016, while helping Republicans block Merrick Garland from being appointed as Supreme Court Justice, he argued that a Supreme Court Justice should never be appointed in an election year. Then he said, if this ever comes up in the last year of a Republican's term, you can use my words against me. And then to the surprise of absolutely not a single person, no one was surprised that the next election, we did get to use those words against him. 2 months before the next election, while Ruth Bader Ginsburg's body was still warm, he said we needed to appoint a new Supreme Court judge as soon as possible. And that is exactly what he helped to do, shove the Handmaid's Tale's Amy Karen Barrett right in there just weeks before the election. Don't worry, his complete lack of integrity, spine, constitution, character, or consistency was just getting started. In the run-up to the 2016 election, he was a staunch never-Trumper. He called Trump a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot who was empowering Islamic extremism. He said Trump didn't represent the Republican Party, and if we nominate him, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it. For his criticism, Trump, a man to never be out-pettied, gave out Lindsey Graham's personal phone number at one of his rallies and encouraged people to call him. And in the 2016 election, Graham refused to vote for Trump, instead voting for Evan McMullin, the independent candidate. But by 2017, Graham was able to summon more pick-me energy than a college freshman with daddy issues and became Trump's biggest blowhard. In fact, Graham even openly admitted that he became Trump's little bitch because he was attempting, and I quote, to be relevant. Pathetic. Just gushed about things that make a girl giddy, like how he'd never been called so much by a president in his life. How he was so hoping for the opportunity to be accepted into Trump's inner circle and have influence on par with Melania and Ivanka and Jared. Something I don't think he was able to achieve, because to reach that level of inner circle with Trump, you either have to be somebody he wants to fuck or married to somebody he wants to fuck. And then Lindsey Graham's best friend, John McCain, died. And I'm pretty sure John McCain was Lindsey Graham's conscience. It's basically Miss Lindsey's Jiminy Cricket. And because John McCain was a man of integrity, Trump absolutely hated him and continued to criticize and ridicule him after his death. For most people, if their best friend, who's also a war hero and a lifelong public servant, passes away and somebody criticizes them, you would stand up for that person. But Lindsey Graham is an anagram for weak little bitch. Don't look that up. Just take my word for it. Not only did Lindsey Graham keep quiet while Trump berated his lifelong friend who had just passed away, but he continued to support and advocate for Trump. From here on out, Graham would just continue to spiral deeper into his homoerotic humiliation kink. He'd go on to tell the Washington Post that he'd never heard Trump say anything even remotely racist, even though we have like video of him for 2 years calling Trump out for all the racist shit he says. He advised Trump to ignore Senate Intelligence Committee subpoenas. He said, and I quote, that he had absolutely no interest in being an impartial juror in Trump's impeachment hearings. He would do everything he could do to kill that impeachment as quickly as possible. Strong hypocrisy from the man who rode his law and order moral high horse through the Clinton impeachment. He told Trump not to concede after he lost the 2020 election and donated $500,000 to help him fight the election results. Called Georgia Secretary of State and asked him to disqualify mail-in ballots to help Trump win the election. And Graham was like, you were lying. I never said that. And then a Republican election official who was also on the call was like, no, I heard you. You definitely said that. He's like, no, you just misunderstood what I was saying. I was just doing my job as a senator investigating how the election tallying was going. I called Nevada and Arizona Secretary of States and they didn't get confused, so it's on you, not on me. And then the Nevada and Arizona Secretary of States were like, no, we never talked to Lindsey Graham, ever. He has not called us. That's not a real thing that happened. And then Lindsey's like, well, okay, I talked to the governor of Arizona this one time, and I guess I never talked to anybody in Nevada at all. Perjury about a blowjob is an impeachable offense, but trying to tamper with presidential election results and then getting caught and then lying about it and then getting caught lying about it and lying about it again, that's just, daily business. There's nothing to see here. And that brings us to today, 2024, with Lindsey Graham's integrity and conscience rotting in the grave of John McCain. He has already publicly endorsed Donald Trump for president in the next election and appeared at a campaign rally with him. I think the moral of Lindsey Graham's life story is that we really always need to support LGBTQ plus rights. If Lindsey Graham didn't have to grow up under the hateful, racist, homophobic oppression of the shittier Carolina, Lindsey may not have been so ashamed to embrace his or her, true inner self. And then he probably wouldn't have grown up to be such a fucking asshole that all of us have been unfortunately burdened to deal with.